Welcome to the Power of Music podcast, brought to you by JM International. Get ready to explore conversations with those making a difference through music.
Hello, and welcome everyone to the Power of Music podcast, provided to you by JMI, Jeunesse Musicale International, a global network of NGOs that empowers young people through music across all boundaries. Today, we're recording from Harare, Zimbabwe, where the JMI Global Conference is hosted. My name is Ricardo, and I'll be your host, and for this episode, I'm joined by Eddie Hatitye. Eddie is the Executive Director of the Music in Africa Foundation, a non-profit Pan-African initiative that he has led since its establishment in 2011. Thank you so much for joining us today in the podcast.
Pleasure is mine. I must say welcome to Harare.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fantastic. So, it's only been a few days, but yeah, amazing vibes.
It is a special place to be. And I think quite also encouraging to see so many people coming to, places like this. I think musically, these are really some of the treasures of the continent, but hardly we find, international focus. So it's quite exciting.
I will tell you a secret then now. Yesterday we had the Ethno performance, and for the listeners that have not followed all the episodes, Ethno is a JMI program where we do peer-to-peer music teaching with people from all over the world, and here there were people from various countries, mostly from African countries. And then they do a big performance in the end where they teach each other the songs of their culture. I was watching it full of emotions. I had some tears even at some point.
Right.
And I realized, can I say this? Yeah, I can say this. I haven't been touched by music back home in Western Europe as much as it touched me yesterday evening.
All right.
This was culture. This was everything.
Wow. I'm glad you say that.
Joy, tears.
I'm glad you say that. And I think what was standing out for me is, part of my job, and we're going to talk about it, is really moving across the continent and the world, I think. I've had the pleasure and privilege of seeing so much happening. And last night, it was quite interesting to see, the South Africans, the Zimbabweans, Tanzanians, they're all coming together and pouring out their culture and their emotion. And that was quite a special thing. I think it really talks about the power of music as a connector, as a force. Yeah,
for sure. First question, I'm just curious, what has been your journey into music?
Right. I've got quite it's been a very, I would say, a very straightforward and I think privileged journey. And I say this because I started the arts in actually here in Zimbabwe. I was born in Zimbabwe, although now I've spent so much time in South Africa for the past 15 years or so. But right after high school, I knew that my future was in the arts. And I ended up studying music. And this was quite interesting because my family did not believe that music was something that they could actually invest in. So it was quite a challenging start to my tertiary education. I had to really find ways to finance my studies because I could not even tell them that I was studying music.
Really?
Yes. And I think that speaks a lot about just how music sits in the African context. But thankfully, later on, they actually realized I was doing it, and they began to understand the vision behind it. But when I got into studying music, I also knew immediately that my strength was not as a musician. My strength was as an administrator. So my passion was to understand how the music industry functions. So I spent 4 years studying music, and I was very fortunate that I got to do an internship at a very big publication then in South Africa. It was called Music Industry Online. And the role there was to report on the music business in South Africa, which is arguably the most advanced music industry on the continent. And so that really opened my eyes, and I got to engage with the industry at a very early age. And after a few months, I was actually promoted to head of content. And that brought me also a lot of, exposure when it came to things like just online media. So I got also quickly started to think about, even, content management systems, web development, web design, visual aspects. And of course, with my music background and my studies and everything, I was also very much interested in music production. So I started music production about 15 years ago as well. And all this propelled me into like, a path of music and Africa. And then we started working around 2011 on this idea of what now is known as the Music in Africa Foundation, which started as a music website as well, reporting on the African continent and all those kind of things. And I was really in the forefront of that, putting together things, traveling across Africa, bringing together people and looking at how we can work together. So I say, in short, my road has been purely in music, and I think I'm privileged because a lot of people don't, especially on the continent, they don't end up doing what they study. And for me, I was very fortunate that everything that I thought I would do, I'm doing it now. So I also do production. I'm a music producer. I work with artists from all over Africa, and I've got a studio in my house, and so after work it's always studio, and it's really exciting. So I find that I understand a lot of the issues that affect artists, and a lot of the experiences are experiences that I have lived, that I've seen, and that is also such a privilege. But a few years ago I also did my MBA, because I understood, like, now I understand the music business, but how can I be a better administrator? And I thought about many other options, cultural diplomacy and all the things which apply to the work that I do. But an MBA was very ideal for me, because it allowed me to really understand also the music industry. So just in closing, the focus of my dissertation for the MBA was looking at how technology is affecting the collection and administration of music rights or royalties on the continent. And that's something I'm very passionate about. Yeah,
It's such a wonderful story. Maybe a little side story, but I'm just very curious. If you couldn't tell your parents that you were studying music, what were you telling them then?
I told them I was studying media, but I think they knew I was studying music. But that actually that gave me an inner fire to say I want to prove to them that there is actually so much potential in music. And so when I studied for 2 years, it was a 4-year degree. And in the 3rd year, I said, I'm going to essay. And South Africa now is very much accessible to a lot of people in Zimbabwe. But back then, it wasn't accessible. So even me going to South Africa was a big thing for them to say, wow, he's going to South Africa. And when I got there and finding a job and really starting to do big things, it was quite a wow for them. And for me also, being very independent and not relying on them on everything. I think early on it started to say, oh, he's actually very aware of what he's doing, and yeah, that's something that I hope will inspire other people, because unfortunately music is still that career that still doesn't get the support in Africa.
Yeah, unfortunate. What I really like about your story is, and we talked a little bit about this before we went on air, is that a lot of people that want to learn about music business, they do some sort of online music business course or a music business seminar here and there.
Yeah.
And then you learn about the music industry business perspective, but in my opinion, especially from the artist side, okay, labels and the big publishers, okay, they know how to do business, but artists, they don't see themselves as businesses. And I think actually going for an MBA and really kind of expanding beyond music and then being able to take that back, that's a very valid perspective. Maybe you can share a little bit about that too.
Yeah, I feel that music is a business, and there's so many challenges that push creatives especially away from actually taking it as a business. Societal pressures, cultural factors. I just spoke about my family now. But here's the interesting thing. Then I would still say humbly that I am one of the most active professionals on the continent right now working towards supporting African musicians. It's not something that I'm making up. It's just something I know. I mean, I travel almost 5 months straight a year. I spend so much little time with my family, and that's what it has taken for us to establish the Music in Africa Foundation. But guess what? When I wanted to do my master's and I presented myself, I've got an honors in music. I want to study now something, and there was so much opposition from some of the institutions. Well, you study music, you can't do that. You can't do an MBA. You have to motivate very, very, very strongly why we should give you this, because music. And I was like, wow! But I studied for 4 years. I'm running one of the biggest foundations, organizations in Africa right now that is supporting a lot of the people that are coming from your institutions. Some of the institutions, we are even funding them. So it was, and it still remains a big challenge for anyone coming from music to be taken seriously, from institutions, from governments, culture. So there's so much pressure. But anyway, I ended up doing it. I ended up accepting my motivation. And I ended up becoming one of the brightest and one of the most successful students in that. And it was like, wow, he actually knows what he's doing. But so for artists, when you look at the challenges, especially in Africa, where about 98% of musicians take music as a part-time job. Music is not the primary thing. Now, for them to juggle creating, learning, studying, admin, there's just so much pressure. But I think more than anything is also the lack of that voice, the systems that push musicians to say, look, you need to take music as a business. And that's why I guess it's exciting to see initiatives such as yours that are essentially saying to musicians, look, we need to be focused. Yeah. But I just think that there's so much pressure for musicians to create and almost block out everything else.
Yeah, so the philosophy that we use mostly with young artists is this philosophy of the 1,000 superfans. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's the idea that if you're a single musician, right? So especially if you're an electronic musician, I work a lot with electronic musicians, but also if you're a rapper or any type of solo musician, if you find 1,000 superfans that are like really engaged in you, so that takes time, right? They have to cultivate these relationships. You have to build a brand. You have to kind of connect with people, and you get on average them to pay $100 a year.
Right.
You have a good living. That's a basic. That's a sustainable living. It's not the grand stadium tours that everyone dreams of. That can that can always come. With time.
Right.
But that's how we try to instill with people. It's like focus on cultivate these relationships. And then try to remain independent as long as possible and cultivate
Right. It makes a lot of sense, actually. I mean, and that's also what I find myself saying a lot to musicians. It's like a lot of us here in Africa, we were raised by mostly like our mothers, grandmothers, and they would they would run very, very basic businesses, but they would do it very well to the point of, paying the bills, sending us to school. And what they would do is mostly run a vegetable business. Like they will sell vegetables. So they wake up very early at 5 a.m. They're up and they go somewhere to the market. They buy all the products and 9 a.m. they're outside, they're selling. 6 p.m. they're counting the money. They put the profit aside. The next day they do the same thing over and over again. Now, of course, that's very, very basic. But there is a strong will to run something, to support, to know where you get the cheaper products, what is the price points, what is the profit, and what is the sustainability around that. Now, of course, you see in Kenya or other places, that's why you've got some of the most developed, like, mobile money solutions and all these things. And these systems are powered by these very, very, let's say, entry-level businesses, informal businesses. And for musicians, this is what I wish to see. I wish to see musicians who are so aware of where we are investing, and investment meaning time and money, what we are getting out of it, what we are putting towards very deliberate, let's say, strategies like marketing, touring, and all these kind of things. So unfortunately, the journey of a typical African musician ends up being that of creating, moving, spending, getting a little bit overspending on that, and always almost like running like a deficit on whatever you earn, and that's the challenge when you don't have the idea of this is actually a business. When we record a song, we have to make sure we know the rights and the splits. We have to register the songs. We have to keep track and a sheet of all the rights that are out there. We have to be strategic about when we put the products on the markets. We have to use analytics to understand where the fans are. All these kind of things, when done properly, they make one artist very, 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 bankable. And this is the challenge, yeah.
Yeah, and it also, if you're aware of all these things and you're methodic and strategic about it,
yeah,
and a little bit pragmatic as well, it gives you a lot of power.
Absolutely.
So we should all learn from our mothers then.
Yeah, we should learn from our mothers, and it is basic principle. And something that you said before we jumped on this is that you would be amazed that even the most successful artists, they actually don't take music as a business. I'm always saying that one of the biggest critical skills that we are in need of in Africa is music managers or music management. We simply don't have music managers. And that is such a pity, because I think these are the skills that would propel the creatives into a more financially sustainable, let's say, force.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think then I would comment on that's almost a global phenomenon.
Right.
Because where in Europe there are managers with experience, but I've had the privilege to work with some of these bigger artists, and also with their managers. And I say this with the utmost respect, because it's just an industry, it's just how things go. But 9 out of 10 times, maybe 99 out of 100 times, when we talk to a manager and we ask them, okay, what's the business plan for the coming year? They're like, what do you mean, tour schedule? I said, no, what's the business plan?
Yeah.
And of course there's exceptions. I used to work with an artist that, I think this is a phenomenal example. Yeah. He understood the power of data and to get to know like who's coming to your concert. So he would actually go to venues and say, you can book me for X fee, but I will do half of the fee if you give me the list of everyone who came to my show.
Oh, wow.
And he would get, and they didn't understand. It was like half of the fee, and like a substantial fee, so they would do that. Not all of them, but a lot of them would do that. But he would collect all these data, and he would next time contact them directly, and he would go to venues and say, hey, I have a list of X amount of people in your region. I'm sure they will sell out.
Right.
What is the deal now? And he would get a better deal in the future because he thought about, and that's a business plan. Yeah. But that's rare.
Yep. No, it's a global challenge. And I think that I do think that though musicians are becoming more aware of it. In South Africa, for example, I'm really starting to see quite a growing community of music managers. I hope that will become very clear to everyone that being a music manager means representing the brand, it means representing the business. What I see a lot on the continent especially is that the guys who manage artists who make it, who become big, music management almost becomes the token of arrogancy. It means if I call you and you don't know me, you're likely to just brush me off. And that's a pity for me because almost every second manager I call and they don't know me, because they would rather take a call from a big brand like Coca-Cola, Red Bull. When I say this is Eddie calling you from Music in Africa, and it just doesn't register, they think, oh, okay, then they can be arrogant. But that's the opposite of what they are there for. If you work in whatever Walmart and someone comes to you and say, do you have this product? I am your most important person at that point. So I feel like that's also another challenge. It's almost music managers exist to almost protect and to, just brush away every possible business. And I think that's just such a pity. But it comes from a point of them not actually knowing what they're there for. They're there to build the business. They're there to expand the business, to manage it, and above everything, to make the brand as relatable and explore and exploit all the possibilities that are there. Yeah, I'm scared of music managers. Yeah, I tell you.
I mean, on the other hand, to defend them, it's also not easy, because I also know of managers that tried to do certain, like new things with artists, and the artist then didn't show up, or because they have the same kind of, like they think they're big stars right now, or they would brush the managers off and say like, hey, that's not your work.
It's an industry problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's an awareness thing.
And this is what makes the industry, I guess, because what we're trying to do, especially with the Music in Africa Foundation, and is to try to say, how do we build confidence in the music industry? And I think when we have these role models really showing that, look, this is a beautiful space to invest in, then we're going to start seeing banks, private sector, really, really becoming an ally in the industry. And I think these are some of the things where, like if a bank now books an artist and he doesn't show up, they're probably not going to look there again. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. What is the vision for the foundation?
So our vision is to be the largest and the biggest, most reliable source of information and opportunities for African music creators. And we aim to do that by providing a multifaceted, strategy or force of different things that we're doing, mostly using the digital and the analog space. So on the digital, we run a website called musicinafrica.net, which is an amazing platform for anyone wanting to access information about the African music space. And we employ people across Africa, 5 offices on the continent, over 100 contributors, thousands of research or articles and presentations there, and thousands of African musicians who are registered that provide their information and opportunities to discover music, festivals, all kinds of operators, from booking agents to promoters, venues, etc. So it's really the central space for you to kind of get a sense of what's happening on the continent. But in recent years, we've had also to look very critically at this platform and say, yes, information is important, but what are the daily needs of an average musician on the continent? And we got to the conclusion that every musician or professional wants an opportunity. So we want to be the gateway to an opportunity, whether that opportunity is a funding opportunity, audition, residencies, anything that can give you value as a professional. So that's kind of the motivation for us to. We started out just almost like a Wikipedia, just putting all this information, but now we are curating it more strategically. So if you are on the platform, you see opportunities more, and we send out a very popular newsletter 4 times a month, and that's essentially sending you all these opportunities.
Wow.
Yeah, and we get like hundreds of emails from musicians thanking us, saying, "Look, I'm now in the States. Thank you so much for this. You know, we've helped musicians who some of them had not even recorded something, ended up working with Grammy awarding producers, because there's so much interest in Africa as well. And what we're there to do is to bridge. You know, for example, when a program from whatever, say France or even South Africa or any other country, they've got an interest on supporting African musicians. We want to be there to help them find the right people. We want to be there to help musicians also become aware, to prepare better for these opportunities, because that's very important. And some of these opportunities are life-changing. Now, there is very, very minimal support on the continent. If you look at it in a very singular way, but if you look at it like cumulatively, you can actually see that no, there's quite a lot happening. This is really what we're trying to do. So there is that one part that is like always our flagship project, the Music in Africa portal. And then we are doing so much additional work, physical projects. Because musicians also keep on telling us, information is great, but we also want to learn. We also want money. We also want to exchange. So we have revised our strategy as well and expanded that into providing real physical support. And some of the things I can talk about includes the Sound Connects Fund, which is possibly the biggest fund that we've been running across Southern Africa in the past 3 years, giving really big grants to organizations to do all kinds of work. We have been also funding artists to mobility funding, and also giving them micro grants to produce, especially during COVID. A lot of artists needed support to just, keep the work going. So we've invested quite a lot of money into just funding, although we are not a funding agency. But we are so agile that where we see a need, our first question is going to be how can we help? And normally the answer is we develop a project and we go out there, we try to get funding. This funding comes from all corners of the world, from UNESCO to the EU, and many other places. So we want to be a very relevant partner of the music industry on the continent. We want to see it growing, but more importantly, becoming more professional.
I really like that. It sounds that you have this dual approach where you both look for, okay, what opportunities are out there, and then link people to them, but also the opposite. You actually check what is the need,
right,
and how can we find a solution for this.
And a big part of it is being very inclusive, and we, because we I guess we are transitioning as well from saying, do we really have the competencies to do a project in Nigeria? Where is our strength there? And normally we're finding that our role should not be about really being the implementers of these projects. What we want to be doing in the future is to find the resources, because mostly it's the resources and sometimes the skills. So when we get the resources and we say to the Nigerians themselves, what works for you? How can we be your partner? We don't want to go to different countries. Africa is massive, it's big, and it's got so many dynamics that we cannot even understand. So I guess the bigger picture for us is to grow our work so that we become an ally to partners, and we help them realize their goals, because they are the ones who know and understand intimately what they need. Yeah.
That's good. That's very reflective as well.
Yeah.
And that's really good. What would you say are you most excited about looking at the continent and what's happening?
I think Africa, we've always known this, and that's what I I believe that the world has always known that Africa is dope musically. Like that's always been known. But when you look at Africa, I mean, growing up, there's always been this like a very short list of what we call legends, and legends purely meaning guys who have managed to break the global boundaries and are known everywhere. And that has always been like the big guys like Fela Kuti, Angelique Kidjo, Yuma Sekela. What is common amongst these people is that these were legends, but also very, very old people. And doing also very, very, let's say, the rich African genres that were really also, I think, coming from a very traditional space in a way. But now look at the crop of artists who are at the forefront. These are boys, young men, like very young boys, when you look at, Davido's new song now, what is it, Available, or this stuff. I mean, he's featuring a boy from South Africa. His name is Musa Keys, I believe. And Musa Keys 5 years ago was really not anyone, no one would talk about this boy. He was playing keyboards in church. And when you look at someone propelling from that to here, and that becoming the global sound, and these guys playing everywhere in the world, and these are young boys, I think it is sending a strong, strong message to the world that Africa is here. And coming back to my story, it is showing our mothers that, look, don't sleep on music, because artists are really earning now. Artists are, I mean, if you look at the global reports, even the IFPI reports, the Spotify reports, they're saying the number of artists who are earning more than just about 6,000 USD from their streams is like growing exponentially. And that's what we need, and that's showing that music is becoming, it's showing us that it's a business. Yeah, and it's becoming easier and easier to just see from the figures, from the numbers, that this is not a game anymore. It's really an industry.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question. I know I didn't answer directly, but I think for me it's just to see how young artists from Africa are breaking the boundaries.
And then maybe to go a little bit to the topic of your dissertation and technology, because it's also one of my interests. Actually, with JMI, we're working on a project called DigiBazaar. It's funded by the EU, so it's mostly within the EU. And it's a forum and a platform where we're trying to bridge the technology gap for the music industry.
Right.
And what I see happening, and I don't know yet what's going to happen, so maybe you can shed some light on this. From your perspective, there's two possibilities. We're moving really fast, especially with things that, didn't even seem possible, like AI. That's crazy things that are happening right now.
Yeah.
One, it can, open all borders, and it can kind of level the playing field, because now, everything is possible, basically.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's one possibility. Two, it's gonna increase the knowledge and research gap, meaning that people that don't know how to use it, don't have the resources, will actually stay behind. How do you feel about this?
It's exciting. A lot of people have been wanting to see is this democratization of the space, and that's quite exciting. That the boundaries again are just being like really erased in a way. But that also comes with a lot of things to consider. Good problems, I would say. I think a lot of Africans are aware of the digital, the potential and the avenues, but the challenge is how do we unlock this potential? When you look at just what data means, like, what I was saying, interesting numbers is that now on every single day, 100,000 songs are uploaded on our DSPs. Probably 20% of that is coming from Africa. But guess what? All this data has to come back to the CMOs. And I think I know for a fact that a lot of the CMOs, they are not prepared to deal with this data. Some of them are still tabulating this data with a pen and paper. Now imagine how much data lines you have to process. Now you've got artists who are traditionally not even willing to register their songs. Before this massive change, CMOs on the continent were already, grappling with knowing who owns which rights, because the songs are simply never registered. Some of the CMOs have had so many challenges, they're not even operational. Now, when you look at how the industry is going now, only those entities that are fully prepared, that are embrace technology, that are experimental, that are learning organizations are going to survive. And that worries me a lot, because when I just look at the typical CMO in Africa, I don't think they are agile enough. I don't think they are going to cope with this data. And that's actually taking money away from the pocket of a musician. It's really as simple as that. And so that is the biggest challenge. And the biggest challenge perhaps is that, and we were talking about it yesterday, is that a lot of this the solution has to come from our leaders and governments. And governments do not listen to opinions. They need stats, they need data. And so we need to find ways to really make a compelling fight to them and say, look, this is how much money we are stealing from every musician every month. Until they understand that, until they really see this, I fear that, we can talk, but there's just so much that we are not giving to musicians.
Do you think that the fact that music from the continent is more or less, well, let's say, just exploding and erupting and spreading over the world, that if it becomes, let's say, for lack of a better word, a valuable export product that actually represents countries as well, that might change the opinions of leaders as well, where they see our boys are doing representing, and we should protect them as well?
Yeah, yes and no, because I feel that when you see Burna Boy filling up the stadium in the UK, that almost gives them comfort that we're actually doing very well. Yeah, so the more avenues they seem to appear that give artists money, the more complacent we become. Oh, you guys are performing. That's what I like. This is what I normally hear from government. It's like, oh, you guys are performing. We reduced the tax on instruments, imports. We did ABCD. What more do you want? I think the fundamental right is a right that if I am a creator, the government has to protect my music rights and has to ensure that I am fairly compensated for my music rights. And the challenge is that, and I think what could, back to your question or your example, is if, for example, we would take an average musician in France now, who is, there's SACEM there, and then we say, okay, let's see, if we compare that a musician with a similar artist here in Zimbabwe and say, let's look at their revenue streams. I think this could be an interesting exercise. Where is the money coming from? and you could see live performances, everything is the same, brand revenue and all that. But where you see a big gap is royalties.
Yeah.
And just because here in Zimbabwe, for example, the royalties are not really coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a big, it's incredible. I don't know how to put it. This is your money. You know, it's like when you work and you don't get your pension money.
Yeah. 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 The crazy thing is that even in Europe, where, you know, rights are at least better protected, we still have a lot of problems.
Right.
I have to go to young musicians and explain to them they have to register. They're like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
How does it work?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
And it's a very complicated industry. The terminology, when you look at what are public performance rights, what are mechanical rights,
exactly.
how where, you know, in South Africa, for example, you have to go through 3-4 CMOs. You have to register a song, and just that how it works. And I'm always saying, how can we make it so easy that to an artist it's like buying airtime? You know, like you understand exactly, okay, I'm going to buy airtime, I'm going to buy data, or I'm going to do this. It has to be so simple. And unfortunately, no, like, you know, I work with artists, some really massive artists. They don't understand this. Like when you say master rights, I can bet you this. A lot of artists understand what master rights are from the cool word, like, oh, Kanye West was talking about master rights. But in principle, practically, what does it mean?
No idea.
Promise you, no one has got an idea. And these are the basics that I hope that as an industry we'll get to understand. What is copyright? Not even understanding it in a scientific way, but just understanding that in every song there is this and that, and this is what you have to claim. Those kind of things. I think the more we know them, the better the industry becomes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Something else. What do you think of this, like the JMI Global, JMI coming here? What does that mean to you and this conference?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. It's I think we've got 37 countries here now, and there is just so much that one gets to absorb when you just look at the networking, the new connections that are being made, the discussions, the amount of knowledge, the expertise that is here. And I guess more importantly, it's also, I never look at these events, from a perspective of the edition itself to say, oh, after a week. I look at it after a year. I think a lot of things in my experience started happening after a year. We've got people here who are moving, meeting people, seeing, musicians, going to different spaces and seeing venues, meeting new potential partners. And I think these things start to grow from here. So I think we're yet to see quite a lot of the exciting results of this. But I think just the focus on a country like Zimbabwe that musically is quite strong, but also has not really had an opportunity to host a lot of global things like this is really a great thing to see. I think also just looking at how professionally this is done and how it is run, and as people coming, you really see the effort to you get to ask yourself, how much can I be useful to this? And that is really what we need on the continent, more and more of this, because we don't have a lot of markets and opportunities to network, to discover talent. So kudos to the team. I think it's really fantastic and exceptionally executed. Thank the guys at Music Crossroads who we work with. Actually, we're doing a program with them that is partly funded by us, and as part of a program called Sound Connects Fund, which is funded by the EU as well, and the Goethe Institute, Siemens Stiftung. I said it yesterday that Music Crossroads has been one of the most inspiring platforms for bands, and especially bands trying to break out. Actually, on Friday, we're going to see a band called Mokomba, one of the biggest African exports at the moment in terms of touring circuits. They are an offspring of the global, the Music Crossroads program, and I think it just goes on to show that the results don't come instantly, but it's such a fantastic platform.
If people want to find you or find the foundation, you already mentioned the website, but where can they find you? Where can they connect?
Yes, again, musicinafrica.net. That's where everything sits, and I think from there you'll be able to find the social media and all the links and myself. My name is Hatitye. Good luck spelling that. But yeah, I'm also on Instagram, and you'll be able to find me. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
As always, the last question. What is the power of music?
The power of music is incredible. It is, the force that, for me now, I think is breaking down so many boundaries and barriers. And one that I haven't been saying often, but I'm now really seeing that this barrier is being broken down, is the poverty. A lot of musicians can change their lives with music. I think music unites us, especially as Africans. It gives us purpose. It shows us hope. It gives us a voice that we can never spell out with our normal voice. It marks our existence on a global space. Yeah. And that's just the few words I can say, but I feel like I can go on and on.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. If you want more information about JM, or you would like to get involved, visit www.jmi.net. At JMI, we are on a mission to make the world more musical. That's why we created Mubazar, a digital platform that helps us manage all our musical activities across 80 countries worldwide, connecting musicians with opportunities to grow both personally and professionally. If you are a music professional looking for a better way to manage and promote your music activities, check out Mubazar. Created for music organizers, by music organizers, Mubazar allows you to run music competitions, workshops, camps, auditions, masterclasses, awards, events, and much more. With a massive list of music-specific features, Mubazar offers custom application forms, payments for your activities, jury tools, translations, analytics, and more. Mubazar is fast becoming the best place for musicians to find and apply for music opportunities online, and you can sign up today for a free organizer account by going to www.mubazar.com, registering, and then requesting to upgrade to an organizer on the right-hand menu. For more info, don't hesitate to get in touch via support@mubazar.com. It would mean a lot to us if you could give us 1 minute of your time and rate and review the podcast. In case you have any suggestions or would like to be one of our next guests, feel free to reach out to us through the JMI socials.